I'm 61 years old. I've been with my husband for nearly 40 years, and I thought I had it all sorted out. Love, being faithful, my life. I wasn't the kind to look for thrills or make trouble. I liked my life to be simple and easy to know what was coming next. But now and then, life comes up to you from behind, puts a hand on your shoulder and says, "Not so fast." I never imagined this could happen to me. Please don't make my mistake. It all began on a gray Tuesday afternoon. I had just finished helping to get things ready for a retirement lunch at my husband's job. He'd asked for my help because they didn't have enough people, and I always liked to be useful. The office was full of a strange feeling, a mix of happy and sad. There were balloons, fruit, and cheap bubbly drinks. People were talking about small things, like they had to. I didn't know many of them, but I smiled anyway. That's just what you do. My husband, Mike, was busy talking to the person the lunch was for, and I didn't want to bother them. I thought I would just go and wait in the car. That's when I heard a voice say, "Need a lift, Mrs. Callahan?" I turned around and saw Nathan, a younger man who worked with Mike. I remembered him from some Christmas parties. He was tall, had dark hair that was always a bit messy, like he forgot to comb it, but it looked good on him. He was probably in his mid-30s. He was nice, told jokes, but was never too bold. He was the kind of person you don't notice until you find yourself looking at him for a moment too long. "Oh, no," I said. "I'm just going to the car. I can wait." He looked at me with a questioning look, then at the sky. "It looks like it's going to rain. I parked near here. I really don't mind." I paused. I really did, but my feet were sore and the sky was a dark gray color. I gave a small nod. His car smelled of peppermint and leather. It was clean but looked like it was used. He turned the radio down as soon as I got in, and we sat in that quietness that happens when two people don't know what to say to each other. "You helped a lot back there," he said after a bit. Everyone seemed to like it. "I was just trying to be helpful," I answered, looking at the car's front window. The rain had started to fall softly. Nathan smiled. "That's what people like you do, right? Always helping, always in the background." I wasn't sure what he meant by that. People like me. He looked a bit ashamed. I didn't mean it in a bad way. I just think most people don't see how much women like you keep everything going. I felt my breath catch in my throat. No one had said anything like that to me in a very long time. Maybe never. I looked at him more closely, trying to understand what he was thinking, but he kept his eyes on the road. He was calm and steady. "It's funny," I said, laughing a little. "Sometimes I feel like I disappeared after I turned 50. Nathan looked at me for a second, then back at the road. "You're not invisible, Norah?" The way he said my name made me sit up a bit straighter, like I had forgotten something and he had just reminded me of it. We drove quietly again, the sound of the rain getting louder on the roof. I thought he would drop me off at the gate, but he drove down the small road that went right to our house. "You know where we live?" I asked, surprised. "I've given Mike a ride home before after the company baseball game. Remember? You weren't home that day." "Oh, right," I said, but I didn't remember. I wasn't sure how I was supposed to feel. He stopped the car in the driveway and turned it off, but didn't take the key out. The rain was coming down hard now, making the windows wet and gray. "Thanks for the ride," I said as I reached for the door. But before I could open it, he said, "Norah, can I ask you something? You can tell me to be quiet if it's not my place." I stopped, my hand still on the door handle. Something in his voice made me turn back. "Okay," I said, being careful. He looked at me, not in a way that made me feel small or like an object, but like he was really seeing me as a person, as a woman. "Are you happy?" he asked. Just like that, I blinked. A strange warm feeling went through me, then a cold feeling of guilt. "That's a hard question," he nodded, his eyes still on me. "I think it's supposed to be." I didn't know what to say. No one ever asked me things like that. They just thought they knew or guessed, but no one ever really asked. I looked at him and saw something I wasn't ready for. He was curious, gentle, and maybe even wanted something. Not in a sexual way, not in a wild way, just a connection. I felt my throat get tight. I should go. Nathan nodded slowly. Of course. But he didn't start the car. He just sat there as I opened the door and got out into the rain. I didn't run to get out of the rain. I didn't even rush. I let the water wet my shirt and hair and run down my back. It felt cold and clean and made me feel mixed up. Mike was still at the party. He wouldn't be home for another hour. And Nathan, he was still sitting in the car when I looked back one last time before going inside. That night, as I stood in the kitchen drying my hair with a towel, I knew something was different. I felt alive. I didn't sleep well that night. I lay next to Mike, listening to him breathe, his soft snoring that I could just about hear. It was a sound I was used to over the years, like an old clock ticking quietly. It was familiar and safe. But that night, it sounded different, like it was far away. Like it was a reminder of how far we had grown apart without meaning to. Nathan's question kept playing in my mind. Are you happy? No one had asked me that since I was in my 20s. Back then, the answer was simple. Life was full of things happening, full of good feelings. We were raising our kids, making a home, laughing in the kitchen about burnt food and money worries. But over time, we both stopped talking to each other, even when we were in the same room. The next morning, I did my usual things. Coffee, washing clothes, watering the plants by the kitchen window. Mike kissed my cheek on his way out and said something about meetings and lots of cars on the road. I smiled my usual practiced smile. Then the door closed and I just stood there, still holding the dishcloth. My phone buzzed. It was a message from Nathan. Hey, I hope I didn't say something wrong yesterday. I looked at the message for a long time. My fingers were above the screen. I wrote back, No, you didn't. It just surprised me. He answered almost right away. That's okay. It wasn't a fair question to ask, but I've been thinking about you since the party. The way you looked away. I don't know why I saw it, but I did. I didn't answer right away. I walked around the living room, picked up a sock from under the sofa, and moved a picture that was already straight. My heart was beating a little faster than it should have been. I have been invisible for a long time. He didn't answer for a bit. I thought he was reading it slowly, maybe thinking hard about what to say. When he did answer, it wasn't what I expected. Just a talk, nothing else. I sat down at the kitchen table, the same table where I had served so many meals, where birthday candles were blown out, where we paid bills and had quiet arguments. And now, I was looking at a message from a man half my age, asking me to talk. I didn't say yes right away, but I didn't say no either. That Thursday, I told Mike I was going to do some shopping. I wore a dark blue shirt that I hadn't worn in years, one that showed off the parts of my body I used to like. I put on more makeup than usual, but I told myself it was just something I was used to doing. We met at a small coffee shop on a quiet street I had almost forgotten about. It had wooden floors, soft jazz music, and menus that were written by hand. Nathan stood up when I came in. He looked like he had just had a shower. His sleeves were rolled up and he had a quiet smile on his face. I wasn't sure you'd come, he said. I wasn't sure either, I answered, and it was true. We sat in a quiet spot and talked about small things at first. Books, the weather, the traffic. But then, our talk got deeper. Without us planning it, like going from shallow water into the deep sea. He told me about his parents' divorce, how he saw his mother become just an ex-wife and never really be herself again, and how she taught him to see when women become quiet in their own homes. I told him about my kids, how I missed them when they were small, how I sometimes felt a bit angry about their freedom, how I loved Mike, but sometimes I wasn't sure I knew him anymore. The coffee got cold, but we stayed. At one point, I reached for my cup and our fingers touched. I stopped. So did he. There was a small spark between us, something I couldn't deny. I pulled my hand back. I'm not looking for trouble, I said. He nodded. Neither am I. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe we could keep whatever this was from getting out of hand. But something had already changed. The feeling between us wasn't innocent anymore. When we finally got up to leave, he touched my arm gently. Thank you for saying yes, he said. I drove home with the windows down, the wind blowing through my hair. As I drove into the driveway, I found myself smiling, not because of what had happened, but because of what might happen. The next few days were quiet on the outside, but my mind was busy. Mike didn't see anything different. Or if he did, he didn't say anything. We still had dinner at 7 and watched our TV shows in the evening. But I kept thinking about that moment in the coffee shop, Nathan's hand touching mine, the way he looked at me when he spoke. He wasn't trying to be charming or overly dramatic. He was just there, like he saw me as someone worth listening to. It scared me how much that meant to me. I tried to forget about it. I tried baking, gardening, anything to keep myself busy. But late at night, when the house was quiet and I sat alone in the den with just a lamp on, I found myself thinking about our talks. Not so much the words, but the feeling of them, like I had opened a door I didn't know was there. The next time, Nathan sent me a message. I didn't wait. I wrote back, "What time?" It was a Sunday afternoon, the kind of day that could be either lazy or sad. I wore a sweater and jeans, something comfortable. Not something I had thought about too much, or so I told myself. He was already there when I arrived, leaning against his car with his hands in his pockets. The wind was light and the sky was a light blue-gray color that makes everything look softer. We walked without talking at first. Birds were singing, and leaves were crunching under our feet. The path went along the edge of the water, and I could smell pine and something sweet in the air. Do you ever wonder, he said, what your life would be like if you had made just one different choice? I looked at him. Which one? Any of them. A chance you missed, a talk you never had. I stopped walking. Why are you asking me this? He turned to look at me. Because I see you thinking about it every time we talk. My throat felt tight, not with anger, but with something deeper, a mix of sadness and wanting. I didn't come here to do anything wrong, I whispered. I don't want to hurt anyone you haven't, he said softly. Not yet. The wind blew a bit stronger. A piece of my hair blew across my face, and before I could move it, he reached out and put it behind my ear. It was such a small thing, but my body felt it like it had been waiting to be touched for years. I stepped back. I'm married, I said, almost to remind myself. I know, you're young. I'm not that young, he answered with a sad smile. And you're not old. You're more alive than anyone I know. I didn't know what to say to that. We sat on a bench looking at the lake. The sun was starting to go down, making the water look golden. Why me? I finally asked. Nathan leaned forward with his elbows on his knees. Because you're quiet. In a way that seems like you've earned it. Because you laugh with your eyes before you laugh with your mouth. Because the first time I saw you, you looked like you were holding the world together with a thread and a tired smile. I closed my eyes. No one had ever said anything like that to me. Not in my whole life. We didn't kiss. We didn't even touch. Again, but something we didn't say passed between us on that bench. Something that couldn't be undone. When I got home that night, Mike was watching a game with a beer in his hand. He hardly looked up. Hey babe, everything okay? Yeah, I said quietly. I just needed some fresh air. He nodded, his eyes already back on the TV. I stood in the doorway for a long time, wondering how love could disappear so slowly that you didn't even know it. Was gone until someone else came along and made you feel it again? The next week felt like I was standing on the edge of something I couldn't describe. I went about my normal life, washing clothes, talking to the kids on the phone, making dinner. Just like always. But my mind kept going back to that bench by the lake, to the quietness between Nathan and me that had somehow said more than words ever could. We hadn't made plans to see each other again, but I felt him everywhere. In the wind on my morning walks, in the ache I didn't know I had been feeling for years. I started to notice things about Mike, the way he ate with his eyes on the TV, the way he never asked me about my day, and the way I had stopped expecting him to. I wasn't angry. I just felt a distance, a quiet, polite distance that had been built up over time with all the things we hadn't said to each other. 3 days later, I saw Nathan at the grocery store, of all places. I was in the fruit and vegetable section checking a tomato when I heard his voice behind me. Still the best eyes in the room. I turned around too fast, my heart beating hard, like I had been caught doing something wrong. But he wasn't. Smiling in a teasing way. He was just looking at me gently. Waiting? Nathan? I said, out of breath. You scared me. I didn't mean to. He looked down at the basket in his hand. I wasn't sure I'd see you again. I hesitated. I wasn't sure either. There was a quiet moment. The store was busy around us. Shopping carts were rolling, soft music was playing, and an old woman was asking where the eggs were. He cleared his throat. I think about you. I felt his words like a weight on my chest. I know this can't last, I said. This thing between us, it can't go where it wants to go. I know, he said quietly, but that doesn't mean it wasn't real. We stood there for a long time, neither of us knowing what to do next. Then finally, I nodded. Walk me to my car. Outside, the air smelled like rain again. We didn't talk as we walked. We just walked together, in step, like we always had. At my car, I stopped and turned to him. I can't be someone who lies, Nathan. Not to him and not to myself. I don't want you to be, he said, but I needed you to know. You woke something up in me, something I didn't know I could feel again. The tears came before I could stop them, soft, almost like I was sorry. You did the same for me, I whispered. He stepped closer, and for the first time we hugged. There was no rush, no heat, just closeness. His arms were around me, my cheek was on his shoulder. It was the quiet sadness of letting go. Then he pulled away. Goodbye, Norah, goodbye. And just like that, he was walking away. I sat in the car for a while before I started it. I watched his car's taillights disappear from the parking lot. I didn't cry again. I just sat. With the truth? When I got home, I found Mike in the backyard working on the grill. The smell of charcoal and lighter fluid was in the air. Hey, he said, wiping his hands. I was thinking we could have burgers tonight, like we used to. I nodded. That sounds nice. He looked at me for a little longer than usual. Are you okay? And for the first time in a long time, I told the truth. I'm not sure, I said, but I want to be. We stood there quietly as the sky turned orange above us. It wasn't a real ending. It wasn't a beginning either, it was just a moment. And sometimes moments are all we get, but they're enough to wake us up, to remind us that we are still here, still able to feel, to choose, to change, even after all this time.